The year is 1250. A merchant steps off a ship in London, but the docks smell different. Smoke from yurts curls into the grey sky. Horses outnumber carts, and above the tower, where a crown once rested, flies a banner, stitched with the image of a wolf. Europe has fallen, not to plague, not to famine, to the storm that swept from the steppes and never stopped. This is the world where the Mongols didn't turn back, where Genghis Khan's grandsons didn't ride home, where the hoofbeats that shook Hungary kept pounding west until they reached the sea. In our world, Europe barely survived. In 1241, Mongol riders tore through Poland and Hungary like wind through wheat. Castles crumbled, armies dissolved, kings fled. Then, just as suddenly, they vanished. A messenger arrived from the east. The great Khan was dead. The riders turned their horses around and rode back into legend. Historians call it Europe's luckiest escape. But what if that messenger never came? What if Ogedei Khan lived just one more year? What if the Mongols decided that Europe wasn't a distraction, but the prize? The divergence is small, a single heartbeat. Ogedei Khan, third son of Genghis, doesn't drink himself to death in December 1241. He wakes up, he listens to his generals, and he sends one word west: continue. The riders don't stop at the Danube, they don't wait for orders. They push toward Vienna, toward the Rhine, toward Paris, and this time no one can stop them. Medieval Europe, for all its castles and cathedrals, was never built to fight the Mongols. Knights in heavy armour moved like glaciers. Mongol horsemen moved like lightning. European armies formed rigid lines. Mongol tactics dissolved and reformed like water. Feudal lords spent more time fighting each other than any outside threat. The Mongols had been fighting the world for 50 years. So, when the horde rolls west in 1242, Europe doesn't stand a chance Vienna falls in spring. The Mongols don't storm the walls. They don't need to. They surround the city, cut off its supplies, and wait. Hunger does the rest. By summer, the gates open. By autumn, the Rhine is crossed. German princes try to unite, but they're too slow, too proud, too fractured. One by one, their cities burn, not out of cruelty, out of efficiency. The Mongols learned long ago that fear is faster than conquest. Burn one city and 10 others surrender. France braces for impact. King Louis IX calls for a crusade, not to Jerusalem, but to save Christendom itself. Knights gather. Prayers rise, bells ring across the land. But when the Mongol scouts appear on the horizon, something strange happens. They don't attack, they wait, they watch. They let the French army march east, tired and afraid, into a valley the Mongols have chosen. It's over in hours. The flower of French chivalry, the pride of the West, trampled into mud. Paris opens its gates without a fight. And in the throne room of the Louvre, a Mongol general sits where kings once sat and asks a single question: who else wants to resist? By 1245, Europe is no longer a patchwork of kingdoms. It's a khanate, the largest the world has ever seen, stretching from the Pacific to the Atlantic, from the frozen tundra of Siberia to the vineyards of Bordeaux. One empire, one law, one road. The Pax Mongolica doesn't just cover Asia anymore, it covers everything. And at first, the world it creates is strange, but not entirely dark. The Mongols don't care about your god. They don't care what language you speak or what clothes you wear. They care about 3 things: taxes, loyalty, and roads. If you pay, if you obey, if you keep the trade routes open, you're left alone. Churches still stand, priests still preach. But next to the cathedral, there's a Buddhist temple now, and a mosque, and a shrine to Tengri, the eternal sky. Religious tolerance isn't a virtue in this world, it's policy. The Mongols learned in China and Persia that forced conversion costs more than it's worth. So they let everyone believe what they want, as long as no one starts a rebellion in the name of heaven. The roads change everything. In our world, Europe's roads were muddy, bandit-ridden, and slow. In this world, they're paved, guarded, and faster than anything the Romans ever built. Mongol relay stations dot the landscape every 30 miles. A message can travel from Paris to Beijing in 6 weeks. merchants no longer fear the journey. They fear losing profit to competitors who move faster. Silk from China floods European markets. Furs from Siberia, spices from India, gunpowder paper. Printing presses arrive a century early. Knowledge moves like wildfire, but so does control. The Mongols don't govern like European kings. They govern like architects of an empire that spans continents. Local rulers stay in power, but they answer to a daruhachi, a Mongol overseer who reports directly to the Khan. Taxes are collected with ruthless efficiency. Censuses are taken. Every village, every farm, every able-bodied man is recorded. The Mongols know exactly how much wealth flows through their empire, and exactly how much they can take without breaking it. Rebellion is rare, not because people are happy, but because rebellion is suicide. The Mongols don't negotiate, they don't imprison. They erase one town revolts and 10 others watch it burn. The message is clear. Resist, and you don't just die. You're forgotten. But here's the twist. This world, brutal as it is, begins to thrive, not in the way Europe imagined, but in ways no one predicted, because the Mongols, for all their violence, were never interested in freezing the world in place. They wanted it to move, to trade, to grow, and in that motion, something unexpected happens. Ideas begin to mix. A Chinese engineer in Paris teaches Europeans how to build better bridges. An Arab astronomer in London shares star charts that rewrite the heavens. A Venetian merchant learns accounting techniques from a Persian banker and changes the way Europe thinks about money. The Renaissance doesn't wait until the 15th century. It begins in the 13th, not in Florence, but in 100 cities at once. Forced into conversation by an empire that connects them all, art begins to change. European painters, exposed to Chinese landscape scrolls and Persian miniatures, start experimenting with perspective and colour in ways that won't happen in our world for another 200 years. Architects blend Gothic arches with Central Asian domes. Music borrows rhythms from the steppes. The world doesn't become Mongol, it becomes something new, a hybrid, a fusion. But empires built on horses and fear don't last forever. By 1260, cracks begin to show. The problem isn't rebellion, it's succession. Genghis Khan's empire was always meant to be divided among his sons. But when the empire stretches across the entire known world, division becomes catastrophe. Khans in China want one thing, Khans in Persia want another. Khans in Europe want independence. The unity that made conquest possible becomes the weakness that tears it apart. Civil war erupts. Not between Mongols and Europeans, but between Mongols and Mongols. Brother against brother. Khan against Khan. Armies that once rode together now slaughter each other in fields that still remember the blood of Knights Europe, fractured and occupied, sees its chance. Uprisings begin, not all at once, but in whispers, in shadows, in the mountains where Mongol horses can't reach the Spanish, never fully conquered, reclaim their kingdoms. The Poles rebuild. The French, humiliated but not broken, rally under a new king who promises not freedom, but revenge. By 1280, the Mongol Empire in Europe is collapsing, not because it was beaten in battle, but because it was too big, too distant, too dependent on leaders who cared more about legacy than unity. The Khans retreat east, leaving behind a Europe that will never be the same. The castles are rebuilt, but they're different now. Stronger designed with lessons learned from Mongol sieges. The kings return, but they rule differently. Centralized, organized, efficient. They learned from their conquerors, the roads remain. The trade routes stay open, the printing presses keep running, and the ideas that traveled from east to west during the occupation don't disappear. They take root. They grow. In this world, Europe enters the Renaissance not by rediscovering its past, but by integrating its present. The age of exploration begins earlier. The scientific revolution accelerates. The Enlightenment arrives before anyone calls it that. But the scars remain, the memory of submission, the shame of conquest, and a question that will haunt European philosophy for centuries. What if we deserved it? What if our disunity, our arrogance, our endless wars made us weak? And in the end, that might be the greatest change of all. In our world, Europe told itself a a story of exceptionalism, of Christendom triumphant of a civilization that could not be conquered. In this world, that story died in 1242, and in its place grew something quieter, something humbler, a world that learned the hard way that no kingdom, no matter how blessed by God or man, is safe from the thunder of hooves on the horizon.